This is Cloudflare Wizardry, and the code in coffee was not intentional, but it fits really well with this event. And it is not 30 seconds, it's not 30 minutes of Cloudflare Wizardry, it's 30 milliseconds. Okay. This talk came about because I broke production. I was at a conference and I woke up at 5 a.m. to a message from one of my teammates saying production's broken. And I looked and there's an error message, and I've seen it before because it was my worker script in Cloudflare crashing. Very familiar. If you've seen it before, it stands out. So I hop on. I mean, I'm like fresh out of the shower, just hopping on, hammering code, and I figure out what the problem was. The caching layer of WordPress was reporting a 600 status code. I'm going to close this door, cut the noise. Which, of course, 600 is not a standard status code. So Cloudflare looked at that and said, I have no idea what to do with it, and it crashed. So I had identified the error, and my one mistake of the day was I clicked deploy as I walked out the door to go to the conference and give my talk. And after my talk, I'm looking at my phone, and there's this all hands call with like 38 people in it, my team and several other teams apparently. And I sent a message saying, hey, I deployed something this morning. I told them that. They knew it was there. You might want to back that out just in case it's causing the problems. And they're like, oh, yeah, we found it. We're reverting it right now. Okay, so this talk came about because literally 30 milliseconds after I deployed, the breakage started happening. Okay, these things are fast. They are stunningly fast. My company has asked me to start putting these on a slide, so I work at Leading Edge, and I love their descriptions. I've got it down here in my notes, but we're positive disruptors. That's the easiest way to put it. Okay, we come in companies, we solve problems, we help change things. We're good at what we do. Very, very good at what we do. Okay. So, here we are. I'm going to look at the notes here because what we see here is that Lewin and I saw some exciting things. Lewin is the one I pair with at work, where he's like a 15 times or something Microsoft MVP. I may have that number wrong, how many, but he's got this huge stack of little disks, right? And we start seeing numbers like this, and it's pretty exciting stuff. 4 million hits a day. When it says 3 million, when it's like 3.01, it says 3 million. When it's 3.99, it says 3 million. Okay. I regularly see 4. There's a number of errors here. I mean, this is not code errors to see that few in there. That's their worker script crashed somewhere along the way. And then our request duration. Now, I left the wall time on here because I actually have learned a few things that probably will extend that wall time. Okay. The request duration is the amount of time it takes to do whatever you intend to do in that worker script and return a result to the client. That's usually a web page. Okay. Wall time is how long it takes that script to run completely from beginning to end. So there are ways to run things outside of that window of return to the user. It's interesting. So you return content to the user, but it can still run. Not something you normally think about when you think about like Node, right? A lot of what I write in worker scripts is very similar to Node. We started working with worker scripts with the Key Vault. Somebody had recommended it along the way. And we're using Key Vault more like a document database, key value pairs. Okay. And I've got numbers in here. We'll talk about that, how many and that kind of thing. More recently, they added the D1 database. And I'll tell you, the timing we saw in these things is kind of stunning. I built some tools. I like to build these little tools, figure out how things work. And I built some little tools and I sent it to friends around the globe so we can see like how fast these reads from the key vaults, these reads from the database really are. And what we're seeing are like, I had to actually change the calculation because I kept getting 0. They're running in the nanosecond range, reading from a database in a nanosecond range. Okay. It just blew my mind away. Now, we are using superscripts for managing all redirects, all split tests, all dynamic content change. Well, not all dynamic changes, but most dynamic content changes within the organization that I'm working with. Okay. Redirect. Pretty simple. You're coming in on one path and you're sending it someplace else. Right? Kind of a marketing thing. I built some custom little URL that I can give out for a marketing program, and I might have 10, 20, 30 of those around the country, but they all go to one page to redirect, right? Split test. Pretty simple concept there, split test, right? You've got an A, B, C, D, whatever. We figure out what our successes are on those numbers, how many went traffic-wise those routes, and you kill off the loser and you move the winner up, right? It's a marketing thing. If I got blue buttons on a page and green buttons on a page, which one wins? Depends on what your service is, right? A bank, blue kind of wins most times, and uh, it varies there. Now, dynamic content. This is an interesting one. Angelo actually worked on a lot of the original code that I looked at here up in the front, so bug him with questions too. But dynamic content was not one that he saw. But what are we doing there? Dynamic content is things along the lines of I can do things like if I have a URL parameter, it might identify a marketing campaign. And based on that, I can change the phone number so that our customer support says, hey, this number's coming in on this 800 number. I know that's that marketing campaign. I know what they're going to be asking for. That allows them to respond quicker, more efficiently. Okay. At this point, we're handling about 150 phone numbers across a couple thousand pages dynamically. And we're changing it in that sub 33 millisecond range. Okay. Those numbers aren't quite the 33, but it's where we're at now. We did some optimizations between when I captured those images. This is really cool stuff that I started geeking out about, right? Oh, use case. We talked about many of these. There's one in there for maintaining cookies for source IPs. One of the things we found out was a source IP coming through was giving us Cloudflare. We don't want Cloudflare source IP. We want the source IP of the client. So we have to kind of pass that through as a cookie. Okay, redirect, split test. We talked about those. Single param, multi-param, that's the parameter changing I was talking about. We are talking about doing one-arm bandit, which is really kind of a cool concept where the code decides what percentages we go to endpoints, right? So we say, hey, we got these 10 pages. You decide which one ends up being the winner. You decide where to redirect traffic in there. We don't deal with it. We're hands off. Okay, we're starting to consider that. And they're like, oh, we need all this stuff to run microservices. And I'm like, microservices are kind of a bigger level. I mean, small pieces, but bigger level. I think we honestly can probably do better than most of the responses they were talking about in Azure or AWS. We can do better here in worker scripts, as long as we have the data to work with. Okay, we've got ways to get the data in. Outcomes. I mean, this is another place to geek out about it. They're estimating we've raised revenue of the company. Okay, these are numbers they're calculating. Some of them have been hard calculated. The early numbers where we were doing just the redirects and split tests, the increase was $1 million per week. The early numbers on the single param, multi-param changes that we've added are another 500,000. That's pretty good improvement in sales just by being able to respond faster. Okay. Oh, and fixes to production faster, but you could also break it in production faster too. I found out very quickly. So, worker scripts. Okay. I've learned to think of worker scripts as kind of that man in the middle, right? We usually think of it as an attack, but what's happening? Okay. You as a user make a request. It has to go through Cloudflare. It has to go through the worker script. Okay. Now, the weird one that I found in there is you have to be aliased. If you have the aliasing turned off, it never touches the worker script. Okay. If the alias is turned on, it will run through the worker script. First one it finds. So if you have two of them attached to the same path, you can pick the first one it hits. Okay. But what happens then? You can decide what happens. You can go get the error page and just return that, and everybody will be seeing the error page. You can go get the page they're going to, make changes to it, send it back. You can send back something completely different if you want. In fact, in the case where I was sending out to get that data, I'm just returning a JSON object. And they were capturing that JSON object and sending it back to me. Okay. What you do with it's up to you. Now, I did learn, can't use dynamic content. Think about Angular, React, Vue. What happens there? It sends JavaScript to your front end that then runs and attaches it to one DOM element, and the entire page is right there. This is after that man in the middle. All I can see is what you attached to. It took me a while to figure that one out. I kept seeing these weird things every time I tested. It took me about about 5 months to figure it out with all the other stuff I had going on. So server-side rendering is fine. Client-side rendering is a bit of a problem. Okay. There's also a 60-second cache on top of it. One of the brilliant ones I had, we were having problems writing bulk data into the key vault. So I'm like, I'm just going to make an API endpoint out of a worker script and send it into there. And I used it actually for reading bulk out as well. Save, well, I'm already writing, so I'm reading, but I kept getting the same data back. There's a 60-second cache on top of worker scripts. So if it's seen it before, it just passes a cache back, which helps it to run much, much faster, right? But really annoying when you're trying to get data off an API endpoint, right? So we had to use cache busting there. This connection, right? The worker scripts allow you to connect your resources, your key vaults, your databases, your secrets. I mean, there's this long laundry list of things you can connect to it, which is really cool because you're just connecting to them through the environment variable. So env dot whatever it is, you can access it. You can square bracket and use strings. So one of the things I did with the key vaults is I've got different key vaults for different domains, right? So I've got a lookup table, not real complicated. Lookup table says what domain came in. Based on that, I look up which key vault it is, and then I square bracket variable. I'm attached to the right key vault for the data I need. Pretty simple solution there. Actually worked. I think actually Angelo helped me with that when he was there. We were transitioning when we looked at that one. It was really cool to see. But that environment makes it so easy, connecting to a database. You're already there. You're connected to the database. All I got to do is read and write. SQLite, it's pretty simple stuff to do. And from that point, you don't have to do those weird API calls out and things like that you used to. It's all there. You can connect to, and this is what I just figured out recently, other scripts, other running worker scripts. Now it's asynchronous. Just got to remember that. It was a little bit weird doing that, but I can have like a standard auth that we might use, and we pass it out, pass back success or failure, right? Ran into some interesting one. Free 100,000 requests per day, which seems like a lot, but how many was I running? 4 million on our client site, right? Paid, no limit. Okay, the paid is interesting because somebody asked earlier, if that's tier level subscription. It is a subscription, but it's $5 a month, right? Angela and I talked about this on the car ride. We could do all this in Azure or AWS. He's on the AWS side, but it's going to cost a small fortune to do the speeds we're doing here. Okay, not here. It's very, very, very fast. We can use the module pattern, imports, exports. Took me a while to figure that one out. There's a little tab on the left side that opens up. You got multiple files instead of just all your code in one. Now I realize my superscript, what we were talking about earlier, it's only 400 lines of code. That includes comments. Okay, it's not real long. Now here's the fun one. Remember I said we can run past the time the script returns a response. This context, wait until. That wait until says wait until we've returned the code. Now execute this function. And you have all those you want. And I'm like, one of the ones I was looking at was we want to log some things. What's going on? We want some real-time data, right? We don't want to depend on using Google Analytics. Google Analytics is about 24 hours behind on most of its data, right? We want real-time data on like where they went, what paths they followed, what pages they went to. This wait until lets us run after it's returned it to the user. I don't care how long it takes to write it to a database, to write it to some logging service, right? That's a powerful thing. Now, they can't do cron jobs. I got a demo we're going to get to here hopefully today that cleans up. I have it run like every Wednesday or something like that, and it deletes out the database. And it resets the admin things that I have in here to turn things on and off. Cleans it up for me. I don't know why I picked the day I did. Just kind of figured I'm usually speaking midweek, so here I don't know. But we got the cron job running, clean that up. Use cases, we can change the DOM, we can add cookies, we can do reroute redirect, we can use it as an API. Remember the cache buster, and you have to handle all paging and cores. The course was a pain in the butt. It really just beat me up for a couple of days. This is, to a very deep, low level, you have to handle the cores. Once you get figured out, it's pretty easy, but it took a while to get there. And you have full access to the domain path and parameters. You can make a lot of decisions based on that. Okay. Um, Deployment's an interesting one. I put this on here just under the use cases because I initially used GitHub Actions. Right. I had my file right there in GitHub. I can make the changes there, and I save and I push, and it goes up and it updates. And what I found when I went in and updated, took my code and it stripped out all the comments. Okay, cool. And then it tacked on this extra 900 lines of code up above it. I don't know a clue what that was doing. But what I can tell you is my 33 millisecond worker script was now running 120. And the client was like, it has to be sub 60. Which, as soon as I saw that 120, I'm like, oh, no, shut that off, right? Copy the original code back in there because that is not what we want, not even close. If performance is something you're looking at, do not use GitHub Actions to push. There is no way that I've found to this point. Now, Cloudflare is changing things quickly. I don't know if that's in the process. I haven't seen it yet. There's no way through the action scripts to turn off the build. Build always runs. So it will always minify that code and tack on that extra code. I don't know why. Okay, what I can tell you is we found out very recently that we can connect to the GitHub through the settings in Cloudflare for that worker script and tell it, use this repo, this file, or this folder if you have multiple files. There you can turn off the build. So you can have it watch for changes. Okay, I like that. That's cool. Okay, there's a way to do it. Just it was a little backwards. Okay. Key vaults, low latency edge compute was what I was told up front. I realize how fast they really are. We did find out when we tried to write out like 6,000 validations. So we had taken all these redirects and split tests and said, hey, do all the endpoints actually get 200 responses? Or do we get 301s? Do we get 302s? Do we get 500s, 404s? I don't know. And then we tried to write that 6,000 back and watch the whole system block up for 24 hours because we had bypassed our 1,200 rewrites per 5-minute window. This is where we started, we can use a worker script as a, because it doesn't count against a worker script. Worker script can rewrite those key vaults all day long. Doesn't care. Using their API endpoint at Cloudflare, you got that hard limit. That's a tough limit when you got a large number that you're doing, okay? In a key vault, the key could be 512 bytes. That's pretty decent. Value is 5 meg. Okay, it's a string, 5 meg. And then your metadata is 1K and it's a JSON object. So metadata I might just store like who the user is, that kind of thing. Okay, talking about use cases, we talked about name routes, we talked about lookups. There's the lookup pattern that you use there. Nothing exciting there. We've actually talked about that. So the D1 databases I've been digging into a little more recently. Okay, it's a Cloudflare managed serverless database. It uses SQLite. It's pretty straightforward. The browser tools are fairly limited. There are API tools there as well, but it works. You know, it's got a limit of like 100 columns, right? As many rows as you want, but 100 columns. But it's fast. I mean, it's stunningly fast. The free and paid are pretty decent limits. They really are. Okay, it's really not bad. I haven't dug in too deep to tell you what to watch out for quite yet. So, Cloudflare architecture. Okay, this is an interesting one, right? I mean, this is talking about what are you trying to do? You're trying to rehost something. Do I want to move something over to Cloudflare, right? Here we can add things on. We can do video image transformations, load balancing. They do have that built in. It's available for you. Global DNS resolution, protection, DDoS, that kind of stuff. Compliance visibility. If you're trying to re-platform, right? We can optimize content. We can use the edge, leverage it when you can. Okay. But refactor rebuild is probably where I spend most of my time. Right? They can do the hosting too. It's interesting. I mean, I haven't really thought of them as one of the bigger places to host. I've always thought of Cloudflare as, hey, you go in there, register domain, and you point it somewhere. Right? That's probably what 99% of the people out there using Cloudflare do with it. And that's it. They don't do much more than that. Right? They do. Quite a bit more. Okay. So Let's talk demo here. Phones, computer, whichever you want. This is a live demo. Okay, the QR code will take you to cloudflaretalk.com. Okay, we're going to take a look at some of what we can do here. All right, registering a user using API key vault databases. That's what I was hoping to see, was the phone start popping up. If you're on your computer, type it in, it'll work there too. Just a little narrower on your desktop, okay? We're going to look at what a page looks like when it hasn't been modified. Once you've registered, we'll look at what your page looks like when data is there. We're going to look at the refresh, the cookie, the redirect, and split tests. Okay, all these using different pieces. So I'm hoping this works. This will be the first time, guys. Okay, so what are we doing? Ooh, this is my big pretty picture. Okay, this took a while to put together. Okay, so Cloudflare Talk. Okay, we have register, we have pages that references either user ID or empty. So when you click on the empty button, that's what you'll get. Okay. We have the redirect, we have the split test. We do not have the setup split test. I've changed that. It's on the tab up there. And the cookie. Okay. Everything here is accessible. You can play with it, post this. I don't care. At some point, sometime in the next week, it'll reset all the data and clear out. Okay. We will be heavily hitting the key vaults and the databases with this action. Okay. With this activity, with this demo. And I don't keep any of your data. I don't want it. Okay. Almost everything I do. Register a user is pretty simple. You know, click the button, go in there, plug something in. You don't have to plug in real. Please be nice and gentle with my app and not put anything that you know is going to break on the user ID. Yes, I'm not protecting my database. So if you really want to hack it, it'd be really simple to do. It'll clear the data out in a week. I'm not too worried about it. Email, pick one of your backgrounds, put it whatever you want in the banner text, kind of thing, right? And then save it. Nothing really fancy. Now, I will tell you, this is HTML and raw JavaScript. I don't have any nice platform wrapped around it. So I was running into things like I'm hitting save and it's doing things so fast I couldn't tell anything was happening, right? So, you know, there's nothing super fancy here. I did do a little CSS cleanup. So we got a few of you registered, I hope. We're going to take a look at the empty page. So if you click on the button to go to an empty page, you should see something like this. Okay. The idea here is we have these data points. Okay, and if you actually look on the objects, if you're on your computer and you can inspect the DOM, you will see a data attribute that's data-matcher equals user ID. You'll see one down here that's data-matcher equals header text. The idea being these are the data attributes we're going to look at some point to change some content there. Okay, so in the case of this user ID, we're actually going to replace that span that's inside there. Well, actually, it might be on the div, or it might be on the TD. We're going to replace what's inside it. Okay. Right now, data matcher user ID is inside. Here, in the case of the image path, we're going to change the source attribute and add that one of those 6 images, whichever one you picked. Okay. So, oop, I knew I needed to move that. I was going to grab that one time, thinking it was my mouse. That's not my mouse. All right. So, once you've gone back and you have your user registered, you can click on your user page and you should see something like this with your banner, your text, your information. Now it's going to get some new information. It probably should get the city, state, zip code here. This is going off the IP of where we're coming through. Everybody seeing that? So, oh, I see heads nodding. Yes, it's working. Woo-hoo. I was really hoping this was going to work. This is the first time we're trying this, guys. This is pretty cool stuff. All right, so if you go back to your main page, this is the fun one. Then you click that refresh. It was really horribly named. It should come up with a list, and this list should be the people in here that have registered. Okay, the idea here is we want to check a split test. So pick 2, just click select on 2 of them. Okay, and if we were to refresh again at that point, they will no longer be selectable, I hope. Keeping my fingers crossed. Now at this point, well, let's follow the list. Okay, once you see the list gets there, and once you pick a couple, you got to pick 2. So if we go to the cookie, okay, you should be able to see the cookie was attached. That this data is pulled from a cookie. Those of you that are on a computer, you can verify that there's a cookie in there under Inspect Application Cookies. And it should have the same data you're seeing here. On the phone, it's kind of hard to check. Got to trust me on the phone. Okay, we got a couple of computers, so they could probably say yes or no. Okay, I know some point somebody would be telling me yes or no, maybe not at this talk. That's fine. Okay, if we go back again, oh, sorry, I want to show you. This is what it looks like if you look up what the cookie is. Okay, so the cookie should be in there under cookies with the cloudflaretalk.com. And in there you should have a Cloudflare demo. And if you click on that line, you'll be seeing that JSON object with the city state zip information. City state zip, Cloudflare's looking that up for me. It's got it for me. It's pretty accurate. I had a couple folks that were on VPN. They got some variances. Now, if you go back and you click redirect, you should get something like this. I hope everybody get that nice error message because I haven't turned it on yet. Here's the fun part. We're going to try something here. Let's see where my mouse. There it is. Off the screen. This is the fun part. I'm going to come down here and I'm going to say redirect enabled. And I'm going to save. There we go. That's my really fancy loading thing down there at the bottom. It's saving. Okay, now at this point, if you go back and you go back to that page, it should do something. Did it redirect? Did it pull up data? Oh, I have one head nodding. If it didn't, refresh the page, try it again. Hitting cache, maybe. I had one head shaking no. Not redirecting on you? Try to throw cache buster on the end. Just out of curiosity. Could be your local machine caching, potentially. I may have to throw cache busters into that. At least one person said yes, it worked. Now it works for you. Okay, so it might be. Now, one of the things you have to remember, this brings up a good point. The key vaults take 60 seconds, and I assume the database too, to correctly populate their system. So it could take up to a minute for a change like that to occur. Okay, so now you should again be able to go back. And if you go to split test, this one's going to be interesting because you selected 2 pages, right? One of those could have been your own, might not have been. You come in here, you're going to get test not active first time, right? Because I haven't turned it on yet. And hopefully I wrote that code right and it's not working. But even if it is working, we'll come out here. And we're going to turn on the split tests. And what it should do is a 50-50 between the 2 that you chose after I save, and it's done. There we go. We have both turned on. Go back to presentation. And you'll have to go back and split test and back and split test and back and split test, and you should see it changing which of the 2 you picked. And I'm assuming everybody here in the room picked different ones. Nobody picked the same 2. It wasn't like everybody in the room picked the same 2, right? Okay. How fast do we do that? This is raw HTML and JavaScript and Cloudflare.
Question.
Yes.
I'm able to see the alternating, but
Mhm.
also, I will say, a third of the time getting issues, but that's not accurate.
Oh, I'll have to look into that. I might need to throw cache busting onto that one. We did see some issues across. Shouldn't be, but yes, I'll test it out heavier. Yeah. Yep. Like, question mark Bob equals 1. Just something in the parameters as a cache buster. Anything will work.
Aside from like hard coding, is there a way like you can set it up on the platform to avoid?
Not that I've found yet. I expect we'll see that at some point, but not at this point. No, there's no way to change it on theirs.
You can send back some cache headers.
I don't think that'll impact the worker script. I'll have to test that, but I don't think that works with the worker scripts. The caching still comes into play. The easiest I've found is the cache buster in the params. In fact, I used that in this a little bit. Apparently not enough. Okay, so taking a look at what we did, right? You guys went in and registered. The register used took that data, it sent an API call to the worker script for the API, which stores your data in a database. Okay. It also stored data in the key vault for us for the split tests. Okay. At the same time, when you went and looked at empty, it did go to the transformation, but in that code, there's code in there that says, if empty, just return. We'll go look at the code here in a bit. When it went the user ID, it went to the key vault, it got the data, brought it back. Okay. When we did the redirect, it went and looked up what it needed out of the key vault for the redirect, just taking it to your page. Split test took the two, it had to go to the key vault, it had to pull your object that had your two redirects that you had selected in it, and then it just randomly picked one of the two. Okay. And then the cookie was pretty straightforward because it really doesn't pull much of anything from anywhere. It already has that data. It attaches it as a cookie to the header as it passed it to you. Then the JavaScript in the front end was what displayed it. Okay, so we're kind of at the summary, but let's go in here and go into my Cloudflare. Oh, this is going to be fun. We're going to move this thing out here so I can see better. There we go. I apologize for standing with my back to you. And we're going to log into my Cloudflare. Not Cloudflare Talk. Ooh. That was the only drawback in calling it Cloudflare Talk is then I end up going to the wrong place. You can tell I haven't been in here in a day or two, so we're going to hope that we can get logged in quickly. Oh, I might have to switch my browser. Oh, yes, let's try Google. Oh, nope, we're going to switch browser. Hang on. I didn't think that part through. I'm going to try a new tab. Let's see. Sorry, I didn't think about that one. I don't have my my username password stuff tied into that particular browser. So I'm going to pull this down. Oops. All right. Oh, this one did the same thing. Give me 2 seconds, guys. I'll be there. There we go. Log in. This one has my username and password stuff, so we definitely can get logged in faster. Hey, there we go. It's verifying that I'm human. Yay. And I'm going to drag this out here, maybe. Oh, there we go. Oh, two-factor auth, which means I need to get my phone. Boom. I want to show you guys code. It's kind of boring if you don't look at the code, right? 2FA. Most times, yes. Please don't steal my number. Most of the time I do, yes. What I've learned to do is on the production side, we can do a split percentage. So I have an A and a B superscript. And so the A is running 90%. We move 10 of it to the B and we start testing. We look for failures. And then we shift that number, shift that number, shift that number till we're all the way over. And what I do in particular with Leaf, where I'm at, is they've got 5 domains. What I do is I shift domains over. I shift the lowest priority domain over where we get the least traffic. We test against that one. If that one's working okay, we shift another one, we shift another one. And what I've done is I have all the domains in there in paths that are attached. And we've got like, I think it's old. I think we use old, right? So on the B, they're all marked old. I turn one off, I turn old on the other one. And then when I'm done, I just change the names A and B. So I know which one's the running production version. Okay. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I do. Actually, if you remember, I told you you could do import export. I keep a copy of it in GitHub. The export allows me to import to unit tests against them. So I run my unit tests in the GitHub version. GitHub Actions fires those for me.
Nice.
Yes. Okay. So here's our key vault. As you can see, you can probably recognize a few in here. Not sure why Lewin's in there. Oh, that was probably one of my tests from just to make sure everything wasn't broken in the last couple of days. But some of those ought to look familiar, right? Real complicated stuff, right? So let's see. Let's go look at foo. Not sure who foo is. Oh, we got to go way over here to view. This is tough, that far apart. There we go. That's a string. Pretty straightforward stuff, right? Okay. realized I wrote this whole demo in about 3 days, all of it. So if we had a couple little glitches, we did pretty good for 3 days. Okay. And we're not using anything really fancy to do the split tests and the redirects and things like that we did. Our worker script, here's our transformational script. We'll open that in a new tab, and we'll come down here. The cookie one's boring. If you really want to see it, I'll show it to you. Oh, I want to do the Cloudflare Talk ones. Sorry, I have like 3 different ones in here. We want the Cloudflare Talk. There is no good way that I found, this is one of the ones I don't like, to kind of group these. Yeah, the interface was horrible for that. And if I do get to talk at the Cloudflare Direct conference that I've submitted to, it is one I will say in public. I'm not going to talk about the documentation that's horrible, but this interface could be much better. I'd love to be able to go to, let's go to the Cloudflare Talk group and just see all of mine, or a tag or something like that. None of that's in here. Okay, so you don't need to see the cron job. That's boring. If it runs, it's going to kill our data. We'll take a look at the split test. That's pretty exciting. Angela's familiar with some of that. And let's see, the API, that's kind of boring. Redirect, that's kind of boring. Transformation, I got the transformation. So those are the 2 big ones. So, and probably gotta look at settings real quick. So setting, the routes and paths that you're attached. Remember what I said on the routes and paths. Okay, it has to be aliased. Okay, that domain has to be aliased wherever it's attached and the user's coming in through. If it's not aliased, you can have it on here. It's not going to do anything. Okay, it will do nothing. Okay, that's an interesting little quirk that took me forever to figure out. You have variables, you have secrets, you can trigger events, you have observability. We have runtime things that we can do. Here's our build where we can tie to a Git repository. Okay, and this is not connected up completely. I do have one in the repo that's connected up. I haven't got to that for this part yet. Remember, 3 days to get everything working. And then if we come over here, this is our code. Okay, and yes, I spend a lot of time over here. And fun stuff. Yes. Okay, this preview works really well. Remember, it says demo broken over here because it's, we're talking off the Cloudflare Talk original transformation. It's not finding the right path to get us in there. Okay, but we do get console data, which is really interesting because it does like a 3 times run whenever you change your code before you deploy. But the fun ones really are in the HTTP that I found. When I'm using this as an API, I spend a lot of time in the HTTP because you can actually go in and add your headers and your content to have it push things through. It's really powerful. I mean, for a browser window, it's really powerful because I can change the type that I'm pushing in, and all the pieces that are attached. I can see the response, and there's a lot of powerful things you can do with that. It probably took me 8 months to even figure out what that was. I saw it. It didn't occur to try it and play with it until it was much too late. But you can see here how I'm doing this process attribute. This is the other one that took me a while to even realize was here. Look at that. We can have other files that we can import, break things down, isolate things, make it a little easier for you to work with. If they're already exported so that you can import it in your worker script, makes it easy to test, right? Because you've already got it there. Okay, so at its core, what are we doing here? Well, this fetch is our core, right? We're exporting the default catch. This starts everything: request, environment, context. Okay, we fetch our request. We go over, get whatever page you were going to. It comes back. We store it as a response. We can look at our status codes. We got that 404. That's what displayed the broken for us on that other page, right? Because whatever that path was, there's nothing there. We create this URL object so that we can find the params easily. Okay. We're building a rewriter. Well, this is where the fun begins. Do not, if you're using Angular, React, Vue, any of the SPA type, and you're not doing server side, HTML rewriter is not going to do you any good. Okay, because it's going to change it before that code goes active. Okay. But what am I doing? I'm passing it this. I'm using this handle rewriter, and the handle rewriter is one that we import. Oh, it's down here. Sorry, function down here that we're using. Okay, and I'm passing it an array of what I want to change. Okay. And I'm passing it the param information as well as its type so we can loop through it down here. Okay. And this is probably one, if you're looking for performance, don't use a for each, use a standard for loop. Trust me, your improvements on here are fairly significant. Okay. And if we have a change item, we switch on the type and we set up a rewriter. Okay. So what we've done is we've set up that rewriter object and we're executing the on this attribute, do this attribute, do this attribute, do this. So we have two types. We have a location change and attribute change. Okay, so location in my mind is what's inside that content. Attribute is an attribute on that DOM element. Okay, so we're doing two types and just passing the information we need to change. Okay. And if we look at the param mapping file that has those two types in there, these are pretty standard based on what Cloudflare has given us. I didn't want to look at the param mapping one. Sorry. I built that because the params are really annoying to work with. Standard out of the box. Here we go, two classes. Okay, when I construct, I'm passing it the attribute and content. This isn't how they originally said to use it. For me, it made more sense to pass it in, store it, so that when we pass it this element object, okay, this element function receives an element object. This is how Cloudflare sets it up. Okay, we see if the attribute exists. If it does, we set it. That's simple. In our location change, we set the inner content to whatever we passed into it. That's simple. That's how we're changing content on a page dynamically. Okay. It gets quirky. And if it does get quirky, two things are you, okay, I'm going back to this again. Is it set up so that your domain is actually turned on correctly, right? And are you using a spa? If you're using a spa, this is not going to work. I tell you, every quirk I had was because, hey, I built some little Angular thing and then I tried to change it. It doesn't exist at the time you're trying to change it. Okay. I hit that. I can't tell you how many times I've hit that. That's why we're coming back to it over and over again. Okay. Now the other one that we have over here should be, yep, this is our split test. This is a little more complicated, not too difficult. Let me tell you, rolling back, there's a whole deployments thing, and you just click one button, it rolls back, so it's really fast to roll back. So we have a do A/B test we're bringing in. If we look at this, this really isn't much different, other than this is a key vault. So we're going to that key vault, we're getting split test on. Okay, we're checking, we're getting our response, returning it if it's an error type thing. Okay, if we don't have an active split test. Oh, that's right. That's checking my admin. Remember I checked it and saved? That's what we're checking there. Okay, so then we're taking these URL object and the params and the keys and our destination string and making sure things are set up right. We parse our JSON out for our action and we pass that to the A/B test. So if it all came back correctly, based on the path you came in on, because remember on the redirect, what did it do? It passed your user ID. We looked up your user ID, pulled that JSON data. If we got it all back correctly, we pass it to our A/B test. Our A/B test is over here, where we go to our functionality core. And there are other functions down there. There's a 301, 302, and this all came from Angelo. I barely touched that. Tiny bit of cleanup on the comments, but other than that, it's the same. So what do? We generate a random percent. We do a for loop. Look, there's the let that was in the original code. We sped it up by making it a traditional for loop. We take that percent, we add it to starting at 0. We add it in. We did have to check for 100 because it goes 0 to 99, and we have to be able to handle 100. And if it's within that range, if the random percent we picked is below our step, we redirect. If we kick all the way out, for whatever reason, we have a default that will run the last one on it. So you get a split test. It works. It's nothing complicated. Yeah, there are probably other ways to run a split test, but this was the code I was handed and it worked, and I wasn't going to change it too far. When I ran a unit test, 0 worked, anything in between 1 and 99 worked, and 100 failed every time. So I rewrote the code slightly to make the 100 pass. That simple. Okay. Yes, I am a strong proponent for unit tests.
Quick question, Bob.
Yeah.
You mentioned using the traditional for loop.
Yeah.
Speeds it up.
On the order of about 20 times. Yes.
And the underlying reason
Your for each is a wrapper around the traditional for loop. So it has to do other things before it even gets to the for loop inside it. And it has to return things. Yes.
Yeah, it's a limitation with JavaScript. There's a lot of actual functions that when you compare one to the other work faster.
Yeah.
So like streaming information, regex is insanely fast.
Yeah.
Stream function.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And what I found was the only two I tested, because this is what I had, were the traditional for loop and the let option of pattern. When I tested that, the traditional for loop was on the order of 20 times faster.
So like this implementation.
This implementation is 20 times slower than a traditional for loop.
The for loop is using the index.
Oh, okay.
So it's literally letting the JavaScript interpreter run it for its Lexer and figure out what.
Right. So do a for loop and put a step in between 6 and 7 that says option equals AB options square bracket index I is significantly faster than the for let.
PHP has limitation.
Yeah. Yep. I mean, that's pretty common stuff. All right. So before I close this, do we want to look at code more? Okay, I'm closing. All right, so let's get back to our slide deck. Oh, let's get rid of that. Yes. Well, I will also say, we talked about this one on the ride over. A lot are going vanilla because it's significantly faster and they have control over what code comes out the other end, right? Optimization's a fine, finicky thing. But I have actually heard there's an implementation that's in the early beta phases of Node that's running pure TypeScript. It does not need that. Yeah, and it's very experimental. But
It actually matters a lot. The TypeScript.
Yep.
Will produce less efficient code, but if you just use something you have built to script type out, it's not going to change.
Okay. Hadn't thought about that. Yes.
You can have a build process that only scripts
But
and then it won't.
But I also expect if we're seeing TypeScript running in Node, even as an experimental now, at some point we're probably going to see TypeScript as something running in the browser too, as an option at least. So it's coming. Sure. Cool. See, I told you it was there. I'm not the only one who knows about it. He kind of looked at me funny when I told him that. All right, so best practices. Remember, it can't be a client-side application. You can manipulate DOM elements as long as it's on a client-side. Well, even if it's a client-side application, you can still manipulate what's there, right? So if you wanted to change the CSS class that's loaded or something like that, you can still target that stuff as long as it's not part of that client-side application. We can add cookies. We can reroute, redirect. We can build our own APIs. A couple of conditional things there we have to be aware of. You have full access to the main path parameters. Be careful of the GitHub Actions with its build process. I mean, if you're not optimizing for speed, that can work. Okay, in our case, these marketers are just, I mean, the more speed I can eke out, the better. They're very, very happy. I don't know why 30 milliseconds versus 120 is so important to them in the grand scheme of loading a page, but okay, this is what they're paying me for, right? Yes.
So
Mhm.
you're seeing.
Oh yeah, it's added on top of a normal page load.
Right.
Yes.
So this is only 30 milliseconds, and your page load is 1 seconds. Then this is 1.2.002. But
Yeah.
if you're already hitting that 1.8 seconds mark, you don't want to hit.
Well, and this organization's using WordPress, so we're probably beyond the 1 point something. Okay. So going into the other side here with best practices, right? Your dev environment, paid access is absolutely worth it. It makes your life so much easier. And we're talking $5 a month. Okay. We were having problems on the dev side and getting some testing done. And Cloudflare apparently has some problem for the enterprise client accounts where they can't add a credit card to the dev environment. It took us 2 weeks to get in there, and man, it just killed testing. It just buried us for a while. We got it fixed. I mean, but it had to go through the whole submit a card and let them process and get back with you. And I didn't have to deal with that, thankfully. I just had to sit and watch. Watch the KV rewrite limits, use the bulk access where possible. The bulk write to KVs was not in their API suite when I started. Okay. I'm now signed up for their newsletter. So every time new things are coming out, I'm reading through because I want to know where can I change my application and improve, because that one came out mid-process. Right after, I mean, literally like 5 minutes after I got the email, I'd finished the bulk write as a worker script when the email came out saying, hey, we have bulk write in the APIs. Hey, I'm sticking with what I wrote. Build processes add code, and it does impact the runtime. Right? I mean, dramatically. Cache bust that 60-second. Use that module pattern. It's there. It's good. It's awesome. It's really cool. Test your code. Probably should add that one up there. Test your code. Thank you for reminding me. And that wait until. I haven't had a chance to dig into it completely yet. But I mean, to me, if you have any need of tracking some of this data that you've got going through there, what's going on inside your worker script, right? That context wait until is a powerful thing. Most of my API endpoints were writing it in. I know the write's going to work, right? Do I have to wait to respond to the user? Well, maybe, right? Remember, we had some 60-second problems in there. So yeah, maybe it's okay to make them wait a little bit. You don't want the users to think it's too fast and really freak out on you. That 60-second is pretty stable, actually. Most cases, what I've seen in production level usage is this: the key vault writes are finished globally within about 30 seconds. That's pretty stunning. That's incredibly fast. Okay, this is why I'm geeking out about this stuff. This stuff is tremendous. Okay, I can't tell you what this would cost to try and do it.